Alrighty, I am back. Thank you for being patient, everyone. Cash, you still there?
Yep.
Galactic Roamer, I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Yeah,
Just take memory lane, man, back to high school years and just
the
music.
music.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Oh no, I'm not complaining.
This the Pearl Jam, especially. Yeah, from way back when. All right. So I was asked questions about supercontroller. So let's take a look at the first supercontroller. Are you still here, Nick? By the way, even if you're not, I'll make a highlight for you. Okay, the first supercontroller. It's a cat, Conrad. How you doing? It's weird. You usually like jump in with a cheer in the at the start of it there. Hello, hello. All right, so supercontroller is a little bit of a hybrid build. There's the cheers that I was looking for. So it's mainly like so the original concept for this is like a really old meta build. This is ancient. This is from the days when no win scenario was still around. So this was a build that excelled at no-win scenario, although there weren't any science ships that could handle this build. This was mainly for destroyers. Anything that could run a gravity well, basically gravity well 1, and add like a 4-3 layout and can fit a torpedo. Starbuck, hey. So this is not a build that you'll see used much. There are a few old timers that will use this build that know about this build, but it's kind of ancient. If you used to do no win scenario and back in the day, you're just in times two. If you used to do no win scenario back in the day, you will recognize what this build is.
Yep.
It's what I call a pin and spike build. So what it does, it's a burst build. It's not a DPS build. It doesn't really do decent DPS, and you're wondering like, what's the difference between DPS and burst? DPS, of course, is damage over time, and you want to do as much DPS over as little time as possible. A burst build does not care about the time element. It cares about dealing a shit ton of damage right up front, straight away. So with like no win scenarios, you know exactly when and where things are gonna spawn in. So you basically you have time to, you know, control how your damage output. Like for example, Azure Nebula, you know exactly when and where stuff is gonna spawn. You don't know what's gonna spawn, but you know when it's gonna spawn and you know where it's gonna spawn. The zombie killer PvP build. So this is the first supercontroller. The main component of this build is the gravimetric photon torpedo. That's basically what it is. Like I said, this used to be originally a destroyer build. I ported it over to the spearhead. It works well on the spearhead. It'll work well on the E-Dog. It'll work well on the Bowel sentry ship. Any ship that has forward facing, like 4-3 is good, or 4-2 in the case of the E-Dog. E-Dog has also pets, so that's fine. That works out well. So the main thing is the gravimetric photon torpedo and the grav well. So you can actually, like I said, you can make this build work on a destroyer as well. On a destroyer, you'd be using Gravwell 1, but you'd have access to Scatter Volley 3 instead. So it's like it's it's neutral, whatever. It works fine. You don't actually need like a Gravwell 3. A Gravwell 1 works well, but this is super controller, so we're going absolutely freaking nuts with the gravity well. And as you can see here, it's a science ship, but hell, there's like not a lot of science abilities on there. That's because I only basically need the Gravwell 1. This is there just to proc the secondary deflector. That's it. That's all. Um, most of the ship's damage is going to come from the gravimetric photon torpedo. The dual heavies and the turrets are going to do some damage. And what's going to end up happening is you hit the grav well to group everything together. You're going to open up with a torp spread and the scatter volley. The scatter volley is going to soften up their shield. So it's going to punch holes in the thing's shields. They're all stuck right on top of each other because of the grav well. And then the torp spread gravimetric photon torpedo is going to land all on top of them, and all kinds of fuckery happens and expanding clouds of radioactive particles. That's the end result. They don't survive. So if you know this torpedo, if you use a torp spread 3 with a gravimetric photon torpedo, it's going to put a gravimetric rift at each target that it lands on. So it does 5x8, so it shoots 5 groups of 8 torpedoes. And each torpedo has a chance to do a gravimetric rift. It's pretty much 100% chance. That's it. Let's face it. It's almost guaranteed you're going to get 5 gravimetric rifts from a single torp spread. Each gravimetric rift is buffed by most of the same stuff that buffs your gravimetric or your gravity well. So EPG and Control X will buff your gravimetric rift. So imagine having, well, let me just point out that the range of this is like a 1 kilometer radius. So it's a very small radius. But if you use your super gravity well to keep everything together, everything's going to be within 1 kilometer of each other. So everything it's like basically throwing out 6 gravity wells on top of that group, of which you've already softened, you've already knocked out their shields or punched holes through their shields. So I have this equipped with a Gamma Synergetic, which has a lot of crit X on there. You can see plus 74 control. The deteriorated secondary deflector is re-engineered for crit X as well. And I'm using the Delta Alliance thing here, which also has control expertise. And then using the 2-piece revolutionary here, which I believe the 2-piece will also give us damage resistance, flight turn rate, exotic damage, crit severity. It's not that important. Okay, so you could possibly go with the temporal instead here. The temporal might actually be a good choice. The gear that I have on here, I added a neutronic recently, so a little bit of transfer power, and then stuff that has control X on it. This is Bellum particle that has a little bit. I do want to keep some EPG on there. Control X. This has control X. This has control. This is actually crit stuff, but control X. But also, I do want to buff my weapon damage as well. Stat wise, this has been nerfed slightly, so it's not as strong as it used to be. It used to be well over 500. Now it's only 450. But still, if I hover over this, you can still see it's got minus 46 repel, 0.46 repel. So, yeah. So the pull on this thing is stupid, absolutely fucking stupid. And it gets even worse if I buff myself.
Please state the nature. Warning, ship is under attack.
Minus 56 repel. Okay. If I pop that as well, minus 65 repel. So yeah, things fly across the map very, very quickly, and they get to the center like you wouldn't believe how fast. Specialization is usually temporal, primary, and I run constable secondary. Trait-wise, here's where it gets interesting. This is a Juice-I build, right? It's a hybrid Juice-I build. So Fragment of Tech AI definitely benefits you here quite a lot. This one is not so important, believe it or not. Particle Manipulator is not. But this is Psychological Warfare. Increases the effectiveness of your control by quite a lot. What else is there? Just that's pretty much it on the personal traits. I mean, there's other stuff. Your flavor, like whatever you like to put in or whatever you have. As for here, I do have Withering Barrage. That's emergency weapon cycle. This is Withering Barrage. So I am buffing the cannons here. And I put supercharged weapons in there. It's not needed. You can put any kind of control trait here is good. This is just what I use to buff a little bit of buff here, but improved gravity well, and this is the important one as well. Improved photonic officer. For the space reputation, here's a couple of really, really good ones that you want to keep an eye on. Is controlled countermeasures. So extra damage against controlled targets, but then there is this one, enhanced sensors. Increased control and drain from captain abilities. This is just a flat out like 18.8% control abilities. That's from when you're popping your captain abilities, and usually now that's the meta to keep your captain abilities on your spam bar, circling with intelligence attaché. Otherwise, yeah, like that's pretty much basically what it is. What do I have in here? These guys might be wrong. Increased exotic damage, okay. Chance for gravity well to knock enemy engines offline. Now, okay, here's the thing about this one. Let's open this. So I've heard people tell me the chance for this to pop is very low. Okay, so it's true. It doesn't happen that much. 20 each second, 20% chance. It seems like a lot, but it's not. Here's the thing, though. When it procs on everything that's being affected by the grav well. So if you have a whole bunch of enemies, like 5 or 6 enemies caught in the grav well, if it procs, all of them are going to have their engines knocked offline. All of them. And getting your engines knocked offline, basically your defense goes into negative. So if you're being shot at, if you're being attacked by like a whole bunch of people, then, if they're being attacked by a whole bunch of people, their defense has gone into the negatives. So basically you're guaranteeing hits. So if you have someone using scatter volley, which has a mischance, or fire at will, which has a mischance, guess what? You're going to be hitting them. Of course, aftershock. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Super Controller 2 is a little bit different. Where's Super Controller 2? Super Controller 2. And we'll trigger a lockout. Meh. So this is a bit more of a Cytor build than an actual thing, but it'll perform the same thing. It'll perform pretty much the same way. I'm not buffing the torpedoes as much, so more stuff goes into buffing EPG and control. And of course, there's like some other stuff. I'm using the 3-piece of this thing here, the Stealth Fighter set, just because I do like using the subspace jump. and having the quantum charges here for the proc on, where's my nanny? This one, universal design. So just having stuff proc universal design. I think Augie did a couple of videos where he's showing off things like this. I'm not sure if it's this exact build. I don't think his build is a super controller. His build goes off in a different direction, but it's very similar. So here I still have the gamma synergetic, the same thing, the same deteriorating secondary deflector, Delta Alliance hyper, and stuff that buffs either EPG. If it doesn't, then it's there to do other things. If I look at the stats here, pretty much the same thing. 448, and if I start buffing out, it'll jump up. The gravity well is the same. Yeah, minus 46. So still stronger than most people's grav wells. Stations here. This one does have more stuff. I believe in the build that Augie did, he wasn't running this. He was running a science abilities here, a science officer. And he had fire twill down here. And actually, yeah, there is a sweet spot, which has been discussed before, having like about 400 of Control X and EPG, if you can do it. Which I could possibly do if I remove the stealth fighter set and put more stuff. I can possibly get my EPG up. Maybe reduce the control a little bit. I don't know. This does a good thing at pinning things to like in place. It just everything that you hit with a gravity well, they're not moving, they're not going anywhere. And stuff from across the map are flying towards it at max speed. For this one in particular, I actually run Intel primer and temporal secondary. Although I can switch it back to the other way around. I'm not buffing the torpedoes a lot, or the mines a lot, but just having Intel is pretty good. There are some science abilities anomalies that will do flanking damage. So just having that little bit of buff is beneficial. I don't remember which ones they are exactly off the top of my head. There was a list of them someone posted on STO builds on the subreddit a while back. But the list was long enough that, yeah, it works. So again, this is more of a hybrid build. It's not a pure Cytorp. It's not a pure EPG build either. It's more of a controller, but it will still do shit tons of damage, EPG damage. So Spore Infused, there's these two, Ceaseless Momentum and Entwine. I got, the last parse I did on this was, I think, 460k and an ISE. Anorex is 400 with the revolutionary proc without any other buffs. Are you using the full 4 set though? I think you're using the four piece. There's an extra passive bonus when you use the 4 piece, which actually, if you typically use the where is it? This guy, the Protomatter, where you see the +4 critical chance and 15% crit severity, the 4-piece bonus of the revolutionary makes up for that. So you don't actually have to have it. Yeah, you lose out on the competitive engines a little bit from having that speed boost, but let's face it, you can cover for that. You have like Deuterium burn, you have evasive maneuvers. You can put in like emergency power to engines if you have to.
I mean, you got to remember too that a lot of times when you drop that grab wheel, everything's going to come to you anyway.
That is true. Now, the thing you do have to watch out for is people using concentrate firepower, because they will fuck your day up. Just saying. Just pointing that out. Did I do my daily thing for today? I did. Which is, yeah, if you're on a tank build, it's the same thing as if you're on a tank. You have to you can do without the that bonus evasives, and then you have other things that you can do here, which is the like there are like the holographic con officer, for example, that gives you resets your cooldowns of evasive when you use emergency power to engine. Emergency power to engines is actually a really cool ability. There's
I use that frequently, especially with a ship that has an experimental weapon, because you drop that extra power. And if you're using the Soliton Impaler, yeah, that since it goes off the engine boost, yeah, works good.
did they nerf it? They nerfed it. So emergency power to engines 3 actually used to give more power to the engine subsystem than the other things, the other emergency powers. It used to be like plus 50 or something like that.
Yeah, I think they nerfed that a while back though.
Yeah, Spartan, you're the one who noticed that and pointed it out, and then you went and nerfed it. God damn it. So the other thing that's actually also beneficial is oxidampeners for movement. This is really good. This is a really good ability, and if you get the DOF for it, it's kind of a bit overpowered. Just saying, just pointing that out. Flight and yeah, almost doubles your flight speed and that turn rate. And then there are definitely traits that you can put in as well from here, either personal traits or space reputations traits that will speed you up as well if you're finding that you're. So if you don't have to. Okay, let me put it to you this way. You do not have to put the absolute best things for DPS everywhere on your build. You can do slightly less DPS, or put in a trait that's not optimal for DPS and still do well. Right? Just saying, just putting that out there for you. There are traits that are, considered absolutely mandatory because, hey, this is the best of the best for doing damage. You don't have to follow. You don't have to use them. You don't have to follow the meta. You can go off and do your own thing. Just saying. If you want to move around a little bit faster, put in some of that stuff. Okay. What was I doing? I did want to switch over. Okay, enough of that class. Any questions about super controller? Any questions? I've been ranting about for half an hour about super controller.
You're fine, man.
two-part temporal. Neojet saying two-part temporal. So yeah. Hold on, I'm in to hell with honor. Whoa, okay. So do you have a question? I'm guessing he does. So going back to what we were talking about just a minute ago about not having to follow the meta, that's basically how the metas we currently have were discovered.
Exactly, by people putting together stuff that is outside the norm.
Oh, do you guys remember when the Iconian 4-piece was meta?
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah.
Do you know how that became meta? Let me tell you how that became meta. That thing was released. Actually, it was released on Tribble ahead of when it was released on Holodeck. And I took a look at it, and I was like, "Huh, this is interesting. This is actually really interesting." So I went to my DPS buddies, the administration of the DPS league back then. There was still only one league, and I'm like, "Hey guys, what do you think of this?" And they're like, "Oh, it's shit. It's crap. It's reputation gear. It's crap." Which, reputation gear had the reputation of being really bad back then. So I'm like, guys, I want to try this one out. This looks good. They're like, it's useless. I'm like, dudes, let's just try this out and let's like put it into the rotation. All of us together. Each one of us has the 4-piece, and we'll do tactical, intel, fleet, and the pulse in order, one after the other. Like we usually do, like tactical, fleet, intel, fleet. When we timed it, each person, like, I did it first, you do it second, you do it fourth, whatever, etc.
Yeah.
So, I convinced them to test out the Iconian 4-piece. All of us had it. All of us went through and, timed it. Whenever we did our TI, we did the P. So that's where the tip came from. Tactical intel pulse. And they're like, at the end, they're like, oh, wow, okay. And that's how it became meta. From going against the grain. Positioning in... That's more about the positioning. How do
For
I...
control, yes. Because your control is so high usually with the control build that you're going to suffer in other areas to where you're just not going to put out as much DPS. So as a strictly control build, yeah, you're there to put things in their place so everybody else can kill them.
So, pardon me for a sec. We're going to do a little bit of whiteboarding here to get this going. So, let's see. ISE. Going to be a bit rough, so forgive me for that. And call that the center. So we're not gonna complicate this too much. Let me move this for you. So no, I just want a pen. Okay. No. All right. That works. Make it a bit thicker. And we'll use red. Cool. Why did this go black? God damn it. That's fine. It's fine. stupid colors and shit and paint. So what I like to do, if I'm not using the subspace jumper, initial group is just go here, right up to the cube at the start. You are popping your grav well here on this cube, and the spheres that are around, they won't fall into that central part until the central cube dies. Once they do, they're all going to get bunched up here. Take that out. So after the center group is dead, by the way, if I'm using the subspace jumper, I will use it, and I will pop myself right there on the flank of this cube. After that's done, right there, just go right up to the cube. And if you have a grav well, don't use it. You let the secondary controller, whoever the secondary controller is, use their grav well. Usually that would be the tank. But you can use your other anomalies, everything else. So like subspace vortex, golden space, whatever, everything. Just throw everything at the actual transformer and nothing else. If you have like an area of effectability, then maybe over here would be better. Or even something like this, facing this direction. You want to keep your eye out for stuff that's happening here. So if it's a shorter run, or sorry, if it's going to be a longer run, if it's the DPS is not that high, what you want to do is when you're just about to kill this stuff and you're getting ready to head over to here, as you're passing through over here, pop a grav well on here. So you save that grav well for here. Hell, you don't have to go this way. You can go this way if you want. If it's a fast run, if it's a lot of high DPS going on, then don't bother popping the grav well here. If it's one of those super high DPS runs that you know what I'm talking about, ignore that. Save your second grav well for that. The reason for that is if they say the tank, if this is one of those really super speedy runs, whoever popped the grav well here is not going to be able to pop it. So if you're running with Augie and like all the really high DPSers, like a DPS capped run, if it's not a DPS capped run or a slower run, yeah, pop your grav well. Because by the time we get to the tank or whoever the second controller is, we'll have time. We'll have things have cooled down, and we'll be able to pop the grav well, and it'll grab stuff. But if it's a fast run, then it doesn't really matter. So hold your grav well. Don't pop it on.
I've been in that position as the secondary controller where shit's dying too fast, and I don't have time to put my grav well on that second transformer because it's still on cooldown.
Then you
also I'm in here now. Hi.
Hi. So then you would hold it for the main gate and draw everything up to the gate before the attack attack cube comes in.
Yes, if you're secondary controller at that point, then you want to hold it for the gate. Now, if you are not the tank, let me stress this out. If you are not the tank and you have a grav well, that's where you want to pop your grav well. And you also want to pop this quantum singularity manipulation. That gives you 125 to all your science skills. So if you're the controller, for example, once this area is dead,
It also cloaks you, so that's going to help reducing your threat.
yeah, you want to go back here. You pop your sensor analysis, and you pop your singularity manipulation, and then you pop your Gravwell on top of that. Super fucking Gravwell, which you'll see at that point. This is why when you guys are with me and you see the Gravwell on the gate, everything just goes. It just super fast to the gate. Like you guys saw it with fully buffed, it was what was it, negative 0.65 repel. Freaking crazy. Tethered non-baryonic, that's another good choice. Right there on the right side. Just so you want your stuff. Now there are issues. There is a sphere that spawns about right there for the left side. And I think there is one that spawns like all the way in the back here. It's either back here or back here.
Yeah, it's the upper right corner. Yeah, I've seen that sucker.
So unfortunately, they are out. These guys are out of range of max size Gravwell 1s. The only thing that affects them is Gravwell 3s, and Gravwell 3s are problematic to put on the transformers. If you have a Gravwell 3,
they start pulling in unwanted shit.
Well, you start pulling in the probes, and if you're not careful, they can start repairing the gate.
Exactly. That's why I usually, when I'm the tank, I usually rely on my Baul stuff to kind of get, at the very least, soften up those stray spheres. Because the range on those things is fantastic.
Yeah, so the one thing you want to keep in mind, though, it's not that big of an issue to pop a Gravwell 3.
Yes, Augie.
On the sides. But if you do pop like big Gravwells on there, even like Gravwell 1, you wanna have a non-improved Gravwell on the sides. You want the short duration Gravwells on the side.
Be there forever.
The ones that last for 20 seconds, not the ones that last for 40 seconds, because 40 seconds
will pull everything eventually.
Will pull everything, yeah. Especially if it's a slower run. If it's a slower run and you're a controller, like I said, even if you're a controller, say on the left, you take this position here, kind of. You want to keep your eye on the central group. Now, if things are dying slowly here, and there's still time for stuff to kill, and you have your eye here, that your Gravwell from the center has popped off, you can disengage. You will definitely have to disengage, head towards the center a little bit, pop another Gravwell, then head back. And the same applies. You're the controller. You have to keep your eye on everything on the field. If things are dying slowly here and there is nothing controlling stuff in the center, disengage, pop your Gravwell, and then head back. Now, this keeping your eye on everything that's going on, that's important for not just the controller, that's for everyone else. It goes for the tank as well. And actually, for tanking, I do something similar. So normally tanking, you'd be something like that, or something like that above. Like I like to hang about above the thing. I know people like to.
I'm at too, kind of a little bit above the center of the transformer, just below the cube.
All right, so for most of the time, I'm like this or above the transformer. But once this shit is about to die and the spheres are about to die as well, I move. I will actually sit right there between this and that, the group. I'll still have a little bit of damage going off this way, but I will also be doing damage to the group here. because that shit is gonna pound your controller. Like we talked before.
That's a good idea. I never thought about that because that's a good way to get some aggro off of your controller.
Yeah, because your controller's going to take a lot of aggro.
Yeah, they're always the most difficult to keep aggro off of.
And this is where they get their aggro.
Yeah, from all the spawns pouring in from the gate.
Yep.
So we
because
talked about
basically those entire groups. You're affecting all of them when you with that grav well. So they're like, "Oh, hey, you're a bad dude."
Yeah, you're generating a lot of threat because you're hitting everything at once.
Yep.
so we talked about this group might die actually, but if it doesn't die and still hangs around, or a new group has popped up, it's gotten hit by that grav well, they've been stewing in that grav well for a while, they are pissed at you, and when you're gonna cross to this angle, they're just gonna try to pop you off. So even if you're not popping at the second grav well, which we've discussed already, like if you're popping the grav well here while you're crossing, they're going to be extra pissed at you. If you're not, they're still going to be pissed at you. So as a
the
tank,
remnants of that first grav well still a little there, so they're going to be like,
sitting here as a tank, you guys are going to have to judge it yourselves. You'll have range to hit this stuff, and you should have range with your FA to hit the stuff over on this side. More than likely. If not, you know what? You're the tank. You already have the aggro of all this stuff. You can disengage.
Yeah, let the DPS
You can
just
move.
handle it.
Yeah.
Or use Bowl. Your refractions will still have that range.
Yep.
You can disengage. In fact, I would recommend disengage. As a tank, you do not have to be the last person leaving this area. As a tank, you should be the first person to leave.
Yes.
And head over there, because you want to grab this.
That is one thing I'm always stressing to Grumpy. He is always so slow to move over there.
Yeah, because he thinks he's cleanup duty. No,
exactly. I keep trying to tell him you are not the DPSers. Let them work.
This to get aggro. So that means you have to get your ass over there and start DPSing to get the aggro. Leave the cleanup to the rest of the DPS. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, the DPS is the one.
I can't for Grumpy. He's on his own at this point.
Yeah, it's the DPS that does the cleanup. If there's spheres and shit here, it's the DPS's. It's not the controller's part. It's not the tank's part. The tank can't actually kill stuff off. Tank doesn't do enough DPS.
Unless you're Augie.
I mean, mine can too. I'm usually doing like 200k with a tank, but if I'm having to do that, my tanking stats are going to suffer.
Yep.
Which means you're more likely to get killed.
Yep. Because you're having to pick up the slack and pick up the extra DPS, and that takes away from your tanking skills. Yes.
So tank-wise, it's the same thing here. Although for this side, it doesn't make that big of a difference because you're going this way. But like again, you start off probably in this configuration, right? And then you probably want to move once stuff starts dying to this, because you eventually want up here, or more specifically, more like this as a tank. The controller going back to the left side, you definitely want to be up here. Safest for the control to go to the front of the gate instead of following the group to the middle. What part do you mean? Like at the end or at the crossing stage? So instead of, as a controller, instead of being here, you go up to there, you mean? For attacking the gate. Yes, because it doesn't really matter. It's to the ball sometimes on the cross.
Yeah, because
On the
as a
cross.
controller, if you have something in the middle and that attack cube drops in, when that last transformer goes down, you're going to immediately start pulling threat. So Neo's right. If you're on the back side of the gate, you're further distance, so you'll have a less chance of getting threat.
From the attack cube, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good because that attack cube will hit like a
Can
truck.
light you up really quick.
Oh yeah.
That shouldn't happen because the tank should be there.
Should be doing their job.
This is
yes.
true. So that's really only something you need to worry about if the tank isn't doing their job.
Or
So
if,
if
the tank
Grumpy's
happens
your
to
tank,
die.
you definitely want to do that.
Or if the tank dies for some oddball reason.
True.
Oh, there is another thing I want to point out here. Let's expand this a little bit.
What I'm taking, what I do. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I do when I'm tanking, usually, I kind of get to the, when we're on that last run for the attack cube, I just get in between it, kind of like that top area on the cube and between the attack cube, and then I just throw out sentry mode. Sentry mode attracts a lot of aggro because it shoots at everything.
Yep.
And that is why I love sentry mode. Because let's be real, it's one of a number of reasons I'm obsessed with that console.
All right, so this is just this is a side view, a silhouette view of you can't see it because the cat's in the way.
Yeah, cat's in the way.
That should be better. All right, so side view. This is the gate. This is attack cube. That's where you want to be. If you're a tank,
Yeah, that's
the
spot I aim for.
That's wrong. This, Grumpy, if you're watching, this is wrong. This is wrong, Grumpy. This is wrong. This is the correct place to be. Because the center of the gate, believe it or not, the top part is the center of the gate. So, this is considering what the distance, so you have weapon distance fall off. The further away you are from something, the less damage you do. For the gate, it is counted from the top. The top is the center of the gate. So if you're sitting here,
and you'll notice that when you fire your beam weapons, because it will always pick the center point at the top of the gate. And your torps, actually.
Yeah, so I'll get to that in a sec, NeoJet. If you are sitting here below and you're shooting at the gate, you'll notice that your distance to the gate is 0 kilometers. However, the game will treat it like you're 20 kilometers from the gate, and your weapons will be pretty nerfed.
Yeah, because there's a distance penalty that does apply, especially for energy weapons. Your energy weapons will actually do less damage.
And that's why most of your attack will spec in the extra points to get the improved sensors.
Yep.
And if you're shooting torpedoes, your torpedo.
Yeah, that just takes them longer
to fly there. So, again, I can't stress this highly enough. I can't believe how many people that will sit there. Look at that distance from you to the gate.
Yep.
Like you're close to that, but you are so far from the gate. This is where the gate is. So this is where you want to sit as a tank, especially as a tank. Because you want the aggro. Everything's going to end up here. If you're here, shooting at stuff that's like 5 to 10 kilometers away up here, and your DPS is all up here, your controller is up here, you're going to be having a much harder time fighting for that aggro. You want to be up there. And New Jet was saying he likes to hang out here as a controller. Is that right? And then when you're the gate's done, you head down to
That's the way I
there.
understood. Yeah, that's
Yep.
the way I understood what he said.
Yep, pretty much. That's the way I
And-
took it as well.
So he's calling it the front of the gate because this is the flank. That's the front.
Yeah,
And
everything in
as-
ISE is technically backwards because flanking damage, the flanking spot is actually facing you from the spawn point. So, I guess technically that would be the front.
Yeah. Going back to this site, I think I mentioned it before. If I will sometimes take this path as a controller, especially if it's a fast run, I'm facing this direction. The grav well is still there. This is already dead. This grav well here is still up. Then to not waste doing this thing, that's much easier, and you can just speed past these guys. And this group is out of range. They're not going to target you. You're not going to get the aggro from them. Well, you have the aggro. They're pissed at you. They're just not going to take pop shots at you.
Well,
So I've
another
been
thing
thinking
too
about
is
doing like a
technically that gate is shielded until the last transformer comes down. So when you
yeah,
go
you don't have to worry
behind
about
it
the
like
gateway.
that, it basically creates a line of sight issue for them. They can't target you until that field drops.
So I've been thinking about making a follow-up video to my tanking tutorial video, just to go into a little bit more in-depth information because I get pretty generic with some of it, and honestly, some of that info has changed since I made the video. So and honestly, this is the kind of stuff I'd really like to cover in that, just the little get more specific on positioning, and especially about what you said about kind of getting a little bit more about targeting stuff in the middle as stuff starts dying. That's definitely some more advanced stuff I should be covering.
Just going to do the transformers here. So that's the cube. That's the transformer. It's supposed to be kind of semi. It's kind of semi three-dimensional stuff. What I like to do. One of the things I like to do as a tank is come up through this way. So go behind the transformer. So as I'm, kind of, spinning around, you get that, you get that, you get that, and then I end up here between the cube and the transformer itself, right in the center. So that would be kind of like that on that end.
Okay, I don't usually worry about that because honestly, those things are so weak that the generators they're so weak. The refractions usually do more than enough damage to take them out in a reasonable amount of time. So I just kind
If you
of
have refractions, if you don't,
right into position.
not every team has it. So not every team has
Oh, yeah,
refraction.
definitely not everyone. Not every tank's gonna be using that. But I'm just saying, for me,
But
that's one of the
tank
reasons why I
should
always
be
recommend
using
Baul.
fire at will. So
Yes.
as long as they're close to the center point, then they should be able to do enough damage to the generators to take them down.
Yeah,
along
but
with the rest of
if
the
you're not
group.
using Baul, what Sark is suggesting is that's a good idea to get yourself a bit closer to those generators for a brief period, because that way you're more likely to take them out.
Yep. So that fire at will covers them.
Yep.
So one thing I have noticed a lot is that this generator is sticking around. Like that one's died.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
That one died.
Same here.
This one is almost like that one. So it's also easy because usually you're on this end, right? And people are shooting like this. This one gets killed. This one gets killed. Eventually, this one gets killed, but that one gets left behind. And you got the spheres and the boobs and the nuts and whatever here all thing, and people are shooting at them, that one is still being left behind.
Yep, I've noticed it too. A lot of times I've had to pick it up because everybody else has done took off, and I'm like, okay, I'll grab it.
So that's why, as a tank, I'll do basically from the top. That's the path I will take. So around the back and come to here. At that point, sitting between the tack cube and the thing, you're able to hit pretty much everything.
That maneuver is something I would do in my Miranda tank, just because it's small and easy to maneuver. That kind of turn right there, that's not going to be easy in an Odyssey.
Unless you got something that's helping you turn.
Also, when you're like this, you can just scoot forward a little bit. Once you see stuff is dying here, you don't have to turn around or anything. You just scoot forward.
Yeah.
And
honestly, I always recommend, to try to work yourself into, facing that direction anyway, because when that transformer dies, you got to bolt over to the other side.
And it's the same for this one. I try to do this. This one is a lot easier though, because that one, the thing that's up here usually dies really quick. I think it's this one that's a little bit late, but that it's for whatever reason that the little nodes on this side are easier to kill than that particular node. But yeah. Whiteboard. We used to whiteboard ISE a lot in the past. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the ISE thing used to be called the coat hanger, because they'll do it in blue. The path that we used to take was like this, so we called it the coat hanger. That was a long time ago, but yeah, we used to. Anyways, no.
Honestly, it's not that much different than that these days.
It's pretty much the same.
It's pretty much the same.
It hasn't changed really. The path. There are more new
right center, boom.
The only time it changes is when you get groups like us that run together when we hit the DPS cap and we have to split it and do like
when we need to 3-2 split it.
Yeah. Because otherwise that should be the basic run, is left to right.
Any more questions from viewers? There's a lot of people watching. Augie, did we learn you something today?
Or do you want to teach us something? That's what he does.
Coverage and cheese. There might be some pointers and stuff out for DPS, but the main thing is, if you're a tank, you want to get there first. So it's okay to disengage early and get to the next location early as a tank.
Because if you're doing your job, you'll hold the threat and the aggro in the transition over to your next group.
Exactly. Like you're not going to be doing cleanup duty. Your job is not cleanup as a tank, and your job is not cleanup as a controller. As DPS, clean your shit up.